ready? Anyone not ready?
Not ready yet.
Thank you. Okay. Everyone ready? Anyone not ready?
A little bit harder to get rid of the discrimination, and that's what we're going to start talking about today. The civil rights movement was not just about ending segregation, it was also about trying to end discrimination. And discrimination is something that's a little deeper, it's inside, and it takes a little bit more effort to get rid of. Here are two names and two stories that are part of the civil rights movement. Emmett Till and Rosa Parks. Who can tell me the story of Emmett Till, first of all? Not from your book, maybe you know the story. The story that you told was of the young man who was actually visiting relatives, I believe, from Chicago. He was visiting relatives in Mississippi and talked about having a white girlfriend. And of course, friends didn't believe him because in Mississippi that sort of thing just didn't happen. And so he spoke to a white woman. Speaking to a white woman, initiating a conversation with a white person was really something that blacks in Mississippi just simply didn't do, did they? And so initiating this conversation with a white woman, she found very offensive. She went home and told her husband, and the young man then was killed. He even confessed later to the murder, but an all-white jury found him innocent. The outrage was felt not just in Chicago, where this young man was from, but really all around the country. And what made that so? What made it possible for people all over the country now to see this case, to hear this case, and be outraged by it? TV, right? Television played an important role. Victor?
Oh, you mean the white guy confesses to the murder and they let him go?
There was no doubt in the minds of anyone probably in the country, but it had been very typically the case that if these cases even came to trial, which they usually didn't, that an all-white jury would not find a person guilty for killing a black person. Not in
It's like that dragging murder a while back in Texas.
Similar. The reaction was similar too. Great outrage. Outrage not only among black communities, but in the North and in other parts of the country. In Mississippi, they sort of expected this. This was sort of the norm. But outside of Mississippi, in many parts of the country, people were outraged. And many whites were outraged too. That a person could be so blatantly guilty and be found innocent. Tell me the story of Rosa Parks. What's her background? What organization was she a member of?
NAACP?
Yeah, she was a member of the NAACP, good. And she had previously, before this particular incident, she had been arrested before for incidents on the bus, refusing to get up or move to the back of the bus. And on this day, she decided that this was a day to try again. The NAACP, of course, was always looking for legal action, always looking for ways that they could fight against discrimination. And as a member of that, I think she was looking perhaps for legal action again. She refused to give up her seat to a white passenger. She was arrested, and her arrest then brought about a boycott of the bus line in Montgomery. The Montgomery bus boycott began with this incident. How successful was that bus boycott? How long did it last? Almost a year, right. And it was very successful. Most blacks did stay off the buses, and that was quite a sacrifice. Why?
Well, the bus was how they got around.
For a lot of them, it was their only way to get to work, wasn't it? Taxis, of course, are expensive. A lot of them joined together in carpools. A lot of them walked if they could. There were certain churches that got their own buses and took people around and tried to get them to work and so forth. But it was a real hardship for the black community because they, for the most part, had not been able to afford their own transportation and had relied on the bus line, which, by the way, was owned by mostly by white businessmen, wasn't it? What happened to the organizers of the bus boycott?
They were arrested, right?
They were arrested. And put in jail. Okay. How was it settled, by the way? It was settled when the bus company finally gave in and said, we're going to let them sit wherever they want, because the bus line had lost so much money. And this came even before the Supreme Court ruled that segregation on buses was illegal. Now, the ruling against segregation on buses did not apply to city buses. Why? Why can the federal government, in this case, the federal government,
Was it the Interstate Commerce Commission?
the Interstate Commerce Commission regulates trade
Across the state lines, right?
across state lines. So initially, it only affected buses that went across state lines, and then later they found other ways, and there are always ways, other ways to get at those buses in the cities. They could say things like, well, the bus was manufactured outside of the state, brought into the state, therefore it can be controlled by interstate commerce. Or they use gasoline that's made outside of the state or refined outside of the state and shipped in, therefore that gasoline is made outside of the state, then it falls under our jurisdiction. We found ways of doing it. 1957, as we move forward here a little bit, 1957 was the Little Rock, Arkansas school situation. What was that situation in Little Rock?
The first integration of a high school.
Central High School was going to be integrated to a very small degree, by the way. Only 9 students were black students were going to be sent to an all-white school. That was the first step in integration in Little Rock. They had a plan that was a multi-year plan to integrate their school, and it was going to start with these 9 students.
Didn't President Truman intervene?
What was I? Yeah, the governor refused. He said, we will not allow this in Arkansas. He refused to such an extent that in the next year, he even did what? 1958. The Little Rock School. He closed them down, right? He closed them down. And of course, he was found in contempt and so forth and so forth. But Eisenhower was in a difficult situation because Eisenhower really didn't believe that you could force people to accept integration. But on the other hand, of course, he said they had to integrate, and that was the law, and he was the president. And it's the president's job to do what? To enforce the law. So he really felt kind of in the middle. And in the end, of course, being the general that he was, the leader that he was, he decided that he had to enforce this law. He was the president, that was his job. And so he sent in troops. He did so only after several weeks into the semester. Civil rights movement, of course, we think of Dr. Martin Luther King. There are really 2 parts to the civil rights movement. There's this nonviolent sort of revolution that's going on. And then there's also the more violent side, which you saw in the film last week, and which we'll talk about later.